Matt's asked to introduce Joy Heuberger because Joy, I have known her since she was in junior high, 54 years ago.
Wow.
She was giving me a hard time earlier, so this is my opportunity here. When Lori and I
Just remember, I speak next.
That's true. When Lori and I started out as volunteer youth workers in our home church at Stowe, that's where Joy grew up, and so we got to work with her in high school, which was really cool. And I'm going to let her introduce her family, but her and her husband Dan served in Uzbekistan for, is it 2 terms, Joy?
We served, well, sort of.
I know there was some movement.
Yeah. We were there 5 years, almost 5 years, but then we got, the country revoked all their visas.
Yeah. So that's where they served with Axcess, and now they live in Cleveland, and they got their hands in a few things in Cleveland. And Joy is with Envision, or
Raising support, yes.
soon to be with Envision in Cleveland.
Yeah.
So Joy, thanks for making the drive over here. She
Oh,
almost
thank
got
you.
caught in the speed trap and waiting. I know that we're all aware of, and fortunately she made it through.
Oh my goodness. You did not, Mark told me a lot about coming here. He did not tell me about that. But thankfully I was driving, and when I saw that, I put on the brake. But then I kept seeing these policemen. I was shocked. Well, first of all, I do want to tell you, thank you so much for having me. I do wish you could have some of the other speakers that you invited, because I do just, they're just so great, and I'm sorry that Bao cannot be with you. I've heard her speak before, and she's just so knowledgeable about the Alliance. She has, her experience is just a beautiful testimony of what God has done in her life. So if you ever get the chance to hear her, I highly recommend it. But for some reason, God chose to bring me here instead. Now, I am very excited to be here. First, because Steve and Lori were my youth leaders when I was in high school, and that time was very formative in my life. If I was going to be punished in Ohio, in Stowe, Ohio, my mom's punishment for me was that I could not go to youth group because my leaders, that's where I wanted to be. And so she would take about like what was valuable to me, you know. If she told me not to go to school, I might have been sad too. But youth group was the thing that was like a very important part of my life. So because of that, the impact that they have invested in me is still a fabric of my story today. And I will tell you, you might not believe this, because I've been out of high school over 30 years. But Lori was still crafting when I was in high school. And I remember these little bunnies that we made out of socks. And I was like, how can you take a normal crazy sock and make it into this cute bunny that we dipped in tea? I mean, it was a really cool project. I don't know if you remember that. But it was but just the love that the way God has worked in their lives is really cool. Now, I will also tell you that I did know Steve and Lori when I was growing up, but I also had the chance to meet Barb Postman and Susie Bland, and who am I missing? Oh, yes, Sandra McAlvey, and I think you might have been there too. But I met with a group of women from this church at an Alliance Women's event at Barbara's house. She served me tea too, so maybe this is a theme. We made tea-dyed bunnies, and she served me tea in a beautiful glass teapot with a beautiful flower that evolved and made a tea ball. And I've had the chance to speak to a lot of Alliance Women's groups and churches, but I know her house, and I remember that night specifically because that group of women were very serious about God and were fervent and desiring to, like, pray. And there that group of women left a very strong impression on me. So tonight, being reunited with Barb has been just a blessing, because I have not seen her in 20 years, and I have thought about her over and over. And I couldn't remember which church she was a part of. So I didn't even know. Like, somebody said, your memory's good, and I was like, yeah, but I couldn't remember she went to Willard. So it truly is a blessing to be here. And I brought a guest with me. In the back is my friend Shang. She has been with Envision Cleveland for 5 years. She moved her whole life and stopped her career as a teacher because God called her to come to Cleveland. And if you've lived near or around Cleveland, I think if God calls you to Cleveland and you go, you know you're not crazy, because I don't know why anybody wants to go to Cleveland. But it's a really beautiful thing that God has led her there. And so she's been with Envision Cleveland for 5 years and is just a beautiful sister in Christ. So if you have the chance to talk to Shang, I highly encourage that. Okay, now I might need help with the PowerPoint, Steve. How do I get it started here? Oh, wow. Okay, cool. This is so good. Okay, now this is my family. I brought you a picture you can pass around. This is my husband in the middle, and we have 2 boys on my right, and we have 3 girls. And my youngest is 5, and then my oldest is next to her dad, and she is 17. We moved to Cleveland in 2017, and my husband even on Sunday at our church said, I never thought I'd live in Cleveland until about 2010, and then I thought maybe I'd be crazy to move to Cleveland. So we just really thought when God brought us together that we would be serving our lives as Axcess missionaries for the rest of our lives. But we have since learned that God's path isn't always the path we take. Here I am growing up. These are the years that Lori and Steve actually knew me. These are pictures from my home church. And I put those in there just because I think it's fun to identify with people what they looked like when they were young. So I hope you can enjoy them. But I grew up in an Alliance church, and that was my home church for my first 40 years of my life. And it was a beautiful church. In fact, I was baptized by Pastor Steve's dad. And just God used that church in my life to grow and mature me. And give me a view of the Alliance. After that, I had the chance to come back to my home church. I did go kicking a little bit and being like, I don't want to go to my home church, God. I'm a college graduate. But I went back to my home church, and I was on staff there for 5.5 years, and I was able to lead their children's ministries, and God used that time to grow and develop me. And then shortly after that, God opened up a door for me to go overseas with the Alliance with Axcess. And I had known since I was in 3rd grade that was really where God was pulling on my heart. My mom had a little book every year. She'd ask us, like, what grade are you in? What is your favorite subject in school? And one was, what do you want to be when you grow up every year? And after that, every year I just told her I'm a missionary. It wasn't like drama, it wasn't flamboyant, it's just God had spoke to my heart, and I was just like, oh, I'm just going to be a missionary, because that's where God's guiding and directing me. So God released me from Stowe Alliance in 2004 at our missions conference through a message by one of our still Axcess IWs, Ed Mangum. And at that time then I went and applied. And as a single woman, I left, and there we are doing some crazy things at our church. But I left and I went to Uzbekistan. Now, the interesting part is this. I'm not sure if this is Tajikistan or Uzbekistan, but this is these are Central Asian women. Mark had no idea, probably, but these are Central Asian women, and the names in here are all Central Asians. Like Rustam, he talks about one evening over tea, my friend Rustam. I don't know exactly where this location is, but this story is probably in either Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, which in the Alliance we do use code words for, But when I'm coming to a group that's being taught about missions, and you guys are going in depth, I'm not going to be using any of the code words. I'm just going to share with you from my heart. So I went over to Uzbekistan in 2005 and joined a team over there. And we, as Axcess workers, our desire was to do church planting. And while I was there, I don't think I have a picture of us. Oh, that's my husband's host family. So I lived with an Uzbek family, and I was their basically daughter because I was a single woman. So I needed their protection. They would make sure my hair was done right. One time I only buttoned one button, and my mom was like, that makes you look loose. And I was like, my button? And she goes, yeah, it says only one button to unbutton. I was like, okay, well, good thing you're here to dress me. And there I was, standing as a 29-year-old, having my buttons on my sweater buttoned up by my mother, my Uzbek mother, who's only 3 years older than me. But she was definitely my mother. This is my husband's Uzbek family, with actually my mom and sister when they're visiting. But we both went over single, and we thought we are probably going to be single for the rest of our lives because we will probably not meet a compatible single person in Uzbekistan when we went to Moody Bible Institute, and there were 600 single men or 600 single women. So we just did not think that was coming, and yet God opened up our hearts to each other, and we are now married with 5 children. Okay, so in 2014, so we ended up being in Central Asia for about 10 years, and then in 2014, my dad was very ill, and so we came back early, and I was also pregnant with our 4th child. We came back early to deliver a baby. And at that time, my dad passed away shortly after I came back, and then we went on a home assignment. During that home assignment, we had been working in Tajikistan at that time with a non-alliance team, and they said, unfortunately, this non-alliance team is going a different direction. We're not going to partner with outside organizations. And so since we were the only alliance workers at that time in Tajikistan that spoke Uzbek, we couldn't go back because the leadership really wanted a team, and they couldn't find other teammates for us. So God redirected us at that time to stay in Ohio, and we applied for churches all over, including Hawaii. I did tell my husband, look at the alliance churches in Hawaii. They need good shepherds too. And instead, God led us to Cleveland, which I think is just amazing because it's, so close to our home. And so Dan is an assistant pastor in Cleveland, and we have been there for 8 years. During that time, I have been teaching English for a community college, and I really love teaching English to newcomers. However, I don't have the opportunity through the community college to share my faith. And I don't have the freedom to invite my ESL students to come to church with me or to engage in a Bible study. And that was really bothering me. And so through a winding road, God showed me a job description with Cleveland Envision that was doing basically many similar things that I'm already doing. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool that Envision Cleveland, I didn't realize they were doing some of those things, is doing very similar things, but with the heart to share with people the love of Jesus. So that has brought me back into the Alliance IW circle, and I'm currently raising support. Tonight, I do want to talk to you about Axcess, and I'm not sure how much you know, so I'm going to give you just an overview of all the structures that Mark mentioned, And I like the pictures because these are pretty standardized pictures that the Alliance is using. I think it helps us to like remember them. So the first, this one is Axcess. Yes, it's spelled incorrectly, and that's intentional. So here's Axcess. Our second one is Compassion and Mercy Associates. Our third is Envision, and our fourth is Marketplace Ministries. And we call these the 4 structures of the Alliance, and each one is going to have a unique purpose, which I will share with you. Wait, where did I put that? Okay, maybe I didn't put that in there. Okay, well, so Axcess we're going to focus on in a minute, so I'm going to highlight these 3 first. Compassion and Mercy Associates is the one that is using our hands to reach people in hard situations. So a lot of these would be working like non-government organizations where there might be poor communities that need development. Envision is we have 21, I think, sites throughout the world, and Envision focuses more on almost all of our Envision sites are in needy locations throughout the world. So like poorer cities like Cleveland or Atlanta or LA, and they have opportunities for community development, but also for teams to come and partner with the Envision sites and spread the love of Jesus through that. And I believe, was everybody here last week? Most of you? Well, some of you were here last week, and this was the structure that was highlighted last week. Marketplace Ministries is when there's a professional who wants to use their skills overseas, and they're serving in their professional career capacity, but yet, and that's how they're getting funded and paid, but yet their ultimate desire to be in that international location is to also be the presence of Jesus and partnering with other people that are like-minded in that. Okay, so I thought when it comes to the Alliance, currently one of the things that we are highlighting is that we want all of Jesus for all of the world. And I wanted to stop before we go on with that because I've thought a lot about that. And I agree with this. I think it's great. But if we want to give all of Jesus to all of the world, we have to have all of Jesus for us first. And so as you think about all of Jesus and you think about him for the world, you think, oh, he loves the world. He's a God who is seeking people. He's a God who brings peace and good news and hope. And he's a God that wants people to know the salvation that he offers through Jesus Christ. Well, that is good, but it's hard to tell all of Jesus for all the world if we don't have it for ourselves. And so going back to all of Jesus for all of the world, I think is where we start with any of the structures. Because what is the motivation of all those structures? It's to give Jesus to the world. And the foundation of that is that we've experienced that ourselves. That we've come to a place where we've said, wow, I am needy. Like, I have deficiencies. Maybe we don't feel like we're really bad sinners, but we all have deficiencies in our areas of patience, in our areas of compassion, in our areas of making the wisest not maybe in the wise choice, just making the wise choice, you know? And so coming to a place where there is full dependence on Jesus and experiencing his grace in our lives, his power to transform us. And that might not be a transformation from being addicted to meth. It might be a transformation from just feeling irritable in our lives or feeling angst. And so I just want to, one of the things I want to highlight is that anyone in any of those structures, by God's grace and by the hope of the Alliance, are simple people that have walked with Jesus and experienced him. Because that is what the goal, I believe, is that no matter where we are, if we're in one of those 4 structures or not, that's not the priority. The priority is that we are walking with Jesus, and as we are being led by him, as his Spirit is filling us, as we are meeting with him, and as he's drawing us to himself, and all of that, then the love of Jesus is coming out, and he as our shepherd is guiding us. And I probably say that somewhat to my background, because I do think when I went overseas as an Axcess worker, there was a tendency that I was lifted up. And people thought, oh, Joy, you're so wonderful to go overseas single. Well, honestly, it was quite an adventure. But it was also a step of obedience. But I look at myself and the other workers that I've worked with, and I think we are the body of Christ. We are the people who bring good news is not limited to Axcess workers. Blessed are the people who bring good news, or the feet of them, but it's talking about the people. But that is connected not to position, but to relationship with Jesus. And that is what we all have to bring. So, God, I really feel like sometimes the value of our missionaries is elevated, and God might call any one of you to missions or a missions trip or something like that. But our value is not based on our position. Our value is based on who God says we are. And I think that that's just important, because sometimes we can get that confused. Now, I doubt Val would have had that in her seminar, but from my background, I think it's just information it's important to highlight. So I did want to highlight Colossians 3:1-4. Since then you have been raised with Christ, set your heart on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Jesus is calling his church to be raised with Christ. And as we get raised with Christ, our minds are transformed, our hearts are transformed, and instead of looking at the things the world looks at, which usually is money, status, it could be like, how many cars you have or things like that. Instead here, he's saying instead of looking at those things, we have a bigger perspective, and we're looking at heaven and eternity. And so that is part of what the 4 structures are connected to, is that as we think about the whole world globally, we are thinking about appearing with him in glory. And we as the church, as the congregation, we want to offer that to people. Okay, so I sort of highlighted that international workers with Alliance carry out their works in these 4 structures, and they have a purpose which shares a common vision, all of Jesus for all of the world. So Axcess specifically, let's go back to Axcess. Their desire is to proclaim the gospel and multiply networks of faith communities among the least reached of the world. Workers maintain a long-term focus on multiplying strong, reproducing church movements. And that's really exciting. Like, when you read this story about people in Central Asia where there is limited access to the gospel, it is really exciting that our denomination, our movement, we get to be a part of having a purpose and a momentum towards building congregations, gatherings of people who love Jesus throughout the whole world. And currently there are over 350 workers that are in this structure. This is, I think, the biggest structure of all of our structures, which is really exciting because through a church plant, that allows those believers then to share the love of Jesus with everybody. And when we lived in Central Asia, we got to experience that often, because the people that we were investing in had such a greater, larger network than I did, and they could then share the love of Jesus to so many people, and allow the gospel, the good news of Jesus to go forth, which is life-changing. Steve, could we show a video real quick that has to do with Axcess? While Steve is showing a video, I will say, you've had so many great opportunities to have people come here, and some of the people that have already included Axcess workers, like Don and Hazel Schaefer. Both of them have been Axcess workers, and I don't know if Don said how long they had been overseas, but it's like 40 years, 45, yeah. So that's really cool to get to experience that for you guys.
Taking the time to engage with us in this conversation that we're having about Axcess vision, mission, and values. What's the primary calling that God has given us in Axcess, and how are we going to carry out that calling? What are the values that drive and motivate us in everything we do?
The Axcess vision is the gospel for every person, a church for every people. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 3 through 4 says, "This is good and pleases God, our Savior, who wants all people to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth." The gospel is an inclusive message of love and belonging for every person. And the most effective way to reach every person with the gospel is through church multiplication, which represents the body of Christ for every people group. Planting churches in an area where there was previously no church will transform individuals and entire communities, revitalizing them. People who once felt spiritually homeless now have a place to gather, thrive, and belong to God and one another. The Axcess mission is to proclaim the gospel and multiply networks of faith communities among the least reached of the world. The Axcess mission statement intentionally uses faith communities instead of churches because we serve among the world's least reached populations, who resides in some of the most challenging environments. Similarly, the Axcess structure name has been intentionally misspelled with an X instead of a C to emphasize the multiplication of churches among the least reached.
We proclaim, we communicate the gospel verbally in the local language. Here's a truth. Since the resurrection of Jesus, every man, woman, boy, and girl who has ever put their trust in Jesus took that step because they heard the gospel message, without exception. However, the reality we face is that more and more we are serving in places where there's real risk in gospel proclamation. For most of us, that risk isn't violence, but rather the potential loss of the hard-fought relationships we've worked so diligently to cultivate. So we play it safe. And I'm struck by what feels like Paul's reckless devotion to and dependence on gospel proclamation to accomplish his missionary task. I'm just wondering if it's time for me to be more reckless. Yes, I know our ministries look differently from Paul's. But in Axcess, we are convinced that it's time to double down on gospel proclamation, whatever the cost. Paul's conviction should be our conviction.
We persevere. We stay as long as it takes to accomplish our mission. In a world where quick solutions and instant results are celebrated, we choose to stay. We stay as long as it takes to accomplish our mission. Why? Because we believe that true gospel access means seeing Jesus with a face you recognize. Not as a foreign concept, but as someone who belongs to your people, speaks your language, understands your heart. This is our calling, to build lasting, local churches that carry the gospel forward in their own communities. The Lord is on the move and his kingdom is advancing. This season is hard and scary, but that seems to be where he often likes to show up. Every day our workers face uncertainty. Some serve in war zones, choosing to return even after evacuation. Others wake up never knowing if today brings a deportation notice. Still others serve in hard places where they don't see much fruit from their labor, yet they stay. They learn the languages and cultures. They build relationships. They face the hardships. Why? Because they believe that every person deserves to hear the good news, and every people group deserves to have a church that they can call their own. This is what perseverance looks like. Not just enduring, but advancing. Not just staying, but transforming. Not just surviving, but building something that will last for generations.
We plant in a time when many claim the church is irrelevant, corrupt, and disconnected from communities and culture. We persist in planting churches, communities of faith. We believe that God is building his church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. By establishing faith communities, we are planting seeds of truth, hope, and faith that will grow and flourish, transforming communities and nations. Each church we plant is a beacon of light in a dark world, a community where people can find Christ and experience his love and grace. These churches are not buildings. They are communities of believers who are active and moving, committed to living out their faith in tangible ways, impacting their surroundings and spreading the gospel far and wide.
This underscores our belief that our goal isn't just to plant a single fruit tree like one might plant in the backyard. Instead, we aim to cultivate an orchard that bears fruit continuously, benefiting not only the local community, but also extending beyond its reach. We envision not just a solitary tree, but a flourishing forest of churches planted across the nations where we serve.
We prepare. We discover, disciple, and deploy local believers. From the beginning, the Alliance has valued discovering those God was calling from the nations to carry the gospel to others, and discipling them to repeat the process to advance the kingdom of God across the globe. We continue to emphasize this preparation of God's people internationally for evangelism and missions.
This has taken many forms over the years as situations and opportunities vary. But today you will find Axcess workers involved in a wide range of expressions of this value. Today, when we find an especially well-prepared and effective national leader, it is not unusual to learn they've been discipled and mentored by one of our identities.
Here's a testimonial. For years, I prayed to one day just see and touch a Bible. Today, I not only have my own Bible, I've been trained how to help my people understand God's teaching to grow spiritually.
Vocational education often plays a role in preparation, providing tools for economic success, but also positions a person to use their skills among those needing to embrace Jesus. Often pastors are able to remain in their ministry location due to skills they've received, and when passed on, the church becomes the center of good for people economically and spiritually too. Medical training as preparation provides gospel access to the unreached, often opening closed doors to position our IWs or a national to be good news bearer among those hard or impossible to reach in other ways.
In Axcess, we partner. We depend on each other in mutually submissive relationships to accomplish our mission.
On the 7th floor of a Chinese-owned apartment building, you will meet many Arab immigrants living in the middle of a bustling, multicultural free trade zone in Paraguay, South America, a least reached place. There you will find a group of sent ones from various Latin American alliance churches such as Chile, Peru, and Colombia, each who has set aside their own cultural preferences, preparing to partner with or near an alliance mission team around the world. They live in community with each other, where they encounter daily opportunities to submit to one another, partner together, enculturate in the community, look for and create meaningful, impactful presence, and work together as one body from different countries, before being sent to teams in some of the hardest places in the world.
We partner because we know that Axcess cannot do this alone, nor does God want us to. We are one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. Partnering can be hard work. We recognize in partnering together, there are values that could divide us, such as community versus individualism, honor versus shame, time-oriented versus event-oriented, styles of leadership, and the list goes on and on. And yet we choose to defer to one another out of love for each other and those whom we are sent to reach, that they will know, as Jesus prayed, that we are Christians by our love. We believe that to complete the Great Commission, empowered by the Holy Spirit, it will take all of us, all of our gifts and abilities, are putting the other first and setting aside our own agenda to be able to accomplish our vision. The gospel for every person, a church for every people.
I got several videos from Bao to share with you, and I picked this one because I liked it. It didn't have lots of pictures, and it didn't have lots of music in the background. It just had information, and I feel like it's very valuable sometimes to not have all the emotionalism attached to a video and just hear what is Axcess, just hear the information. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight that. Okay, let's see. Give me a second. Oh, here it is. I had something, but oh, here it is. Okay. So the things that I wanted to highlight about that are several things. One is that Axcess is a church multiplication focused group. So the focus of our workers who are in Axcess are that we are desiring God to build up church communities, congregations, gatherings of believers within the countries that are least reached. And if we look here at this map, a lot of the 1040 window is where most of that is going to happen, right here within this area. And so currently we do have a majority of our workers here, but we also do have some of those things happening down here in South America too. And Central Asia, for example, just for context, here's Uzbekistan and here's Tajikistan. So from my experience, we are right in the heart of the 1040 window, Central Asia is, and what we expressed with Axcess is that there is very limited opportunity for people to hear about Jesus because there are not a lot of churches, there are not a lot of believers. So just like finding information takes a lot of work. And in some places, it's hard and challenging because there are not even access to Bibles. Although that's changing now with the internet and apps and different things like that, which is really cool that people can listen to it even if they can't read. But traditionally, that is what we are talking about, where the access is limited and where most of the people that are least reached. Oh, yes. Oh, good. Okay, so here on our map we have these lines that tell us what is that latitude. Am I saying that right? And down here is 10, and here is like 40. And if we go across with those, I think here it's hard to tell. It's probably like this line and this line. If we go across the map, that is going to tell us traditionally where a lot of the people are in the world that have to seek really hard to find Jesus. And for example, I live in Cleveland. Now, there are so many churches in Cleveland. If I wanted, every single Sunday for an entire year, I could go to a different church. When I lived in Uzbekistan, which had just as many people as Cleveland, let me think for a second. I think there were possibly 3 church groups that I knew of, and most of the international workers, we'd share these things with each other. There were probably only 3 within the whole country. And so some people would, if you wanted to meet with a church group, you had to travel like from Willard to Cleveland to come be a part of a group. There was just also, in the least reached parts of the world, there's also security risk because, like I lived in a Muslim country, so being a Christian is not culturally accepted or appropriate. And so if you say you're a Christian, then you're automatically going to be targeted. One of our friends, he had one marijuana leaf planted on him in Central Asia. And he went to our home fellowship that we had, that we were a part of. The police pulled him over, and they're like, hey, we're going to look through your stuff. And you say yes. And they looked through his stuff, and when they looked through his stuff, they found one marijuana leaf. He didn't put that there. It was planted on him because we believe that he was being targeted just because of his faith. That's a really good question about what the 1040 window is. The other thing is, in the 1040 window, one of the things that in those least reached areas, a lot of times we would not see a lot of faith commitments. And it was similar to what they talked about, how we were often planting seeds that would eventually, Lord willing, grow into communities. So planting seeds of love, planting seeds of truth, planting seeds of relationship into the community, into the lives of people, so that there was something there when there was a need inside of them, or there was a question inside of them, that they would know, oh, I can go to those people. Because I heard her talking about the angel, which this will also mention, because it talks about the angel in here. Oh, that New Testament book of Jesus's words. Oh, she was saying she reads the angel, so I can go talk to her. So the living in the 1040 window is a challenge, but the ultimate goal of our Axcess workers is that we focus on the call that God has for us to live in that place and be light to those people, and by his grace, share the love and truth of Jesus to the community around. And that's how it ultimately connects back to Willard, Ohio. Because that's what each one of you guys are called to. It doesn't matter if you're probably 15 years old in here, or if you're 55, like Steve thinks I am, or if you're 85. We are all, Jesus is calling all of us. Like it says in Proverbs, wisdom is standing at the door of the street corner, or wisdom is standing on the street corners, shouting out, come find me. And we know that Jesus is calling out to each one of us. Sometimes we feel like we hear it louder. Sometimes we don't feel like we hear it louder. And part of that call, I believe, is that he says, you get to be a part of what I'm doing, not just in Willard. It doesn't matter if you live in Willard. It could mean I get to be a part of what God's doing when I lived in Uzbekistan, but I also got to be a part of what he was doing in Spain or in Bangkok through my prayers and through my partnering by giving to different missionaries and workers and supporting them. So the call that I just want us to end, or go back while we're ending, to the focus of what is the call. The call is that God is in love with each one of you. He sees you, he knows you, and he's called you by name, and now he is awakening your heart, maybe even through this class, to realize that you, once you've experienced that, you can then share that with other people. And that ripple effect is not just for Willard, it's for all of Ohio, into West Virginia and Indiana, and then ultimately over in Japan and in Paraguay. As I've journeyed through the Alliance as being an Axcess worker, and then being a pastor's wife here in the Central District, and now going back to work with Envision Cleveland, one of the things that I have learned, which is just a basic building block of Christianity, but we all know it, is being reminded of John 3:16, that God so loved the world. And I don't think he's talking, I think it's a metaphor for people. He's talking about you. He's not talking about the trees and the mountains, although they are beautiful and nature does draw us to Jesus and his handiwork. But it's just that God loves the world. He loves the people of the world, and he cares about them. So as a group from Willard, I am so thankful to be here because God appointed each one of you to live in this community and to be his light. And my prayer for you is that you experience that in your own heart, and then out of that flows into the lives of others. And why do I share that? Because that's exactly what the Axcess workers are doing as a career, just living out the light of Jesus in the communities that God has appointed them to live. Let's see. My family, as we currently live in Cleveland, we are working on I'm working on support raising. My husband will continue being a part-time pastor at our he's not part-time, sorry, an associate pastor at our church. And unless God releases him from that. And so I do have a prayer card. You can follow the QR code or just sign up old-fashioned, and I will contact you and you can join me. But that is not my goal in being here with you today. My goal is not here to do that. That's the work of God, raising up people to support me. My goal is to, just one of God's children, come and encourage you and share with you what I know about Axcess and get to be a partner with you, as many of you have already partnered with me. I would love some questions. Let me jump in the back.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said the gentleman.
No.
I'm sorry.
You can go first.
I was wondering, so like you went over there and other people were there with you? Was there anybody else from Axcess there?
Yes.
Team
Yeah.
start, and then do you guys then like have a home group, like like invite people to one of your homes, or because it doesn't sound like you're getting a church, you're getting like a home.
In Central Asia, so first of all, when I went to Uzbekistan, I joined Axcess Workers from the Christian and Missionary Alliance, and I also joined another organization that was Evangelical Free Church of America that Axcess was partnering with. And so the Axcess workers from the Alliance and then the Evangelical Free Missionaries, we all worked together as a team and partnered together. That was a unique situation. So that was just my experience in Uzbekistan. Traditionally, we have teams that are only Axcess workers, but in some situations we do like partnerships. And then when I went to Tajikistan, we did not have any other Axcess workers working with Uzbeks. And so the Alliance wanted to, and we also wanted to go to Tajikistan because there are a lot of Uzbeks in Tajikistan. However, because there were no other Uzbek speakers that could go or be with us, we also then partnered with another organization. So, but those two in both of those countries, that was probably unique. Like I know another team that's working with Tajik people, but that was just all Axcess people. Although there would be partnership with the other organizations, there was very much a sense of like, let's partner together, from my experience. How would we go about doing gatherings? Well, first of all, we would do sometimes. My husband lived in Central Asia longer than me, so his experience with churches was a little different. So I'm going to share some of his experience. But his experience was that he was a part of a very small house church that would meet, and they would rotate into different locations and homes. It wasn't like here in America where we'd be like, hey, come to church with me, and have no fear in saying that. Maybe other than my friend not agreeing that she should come to church with me, but no, there would be no like fear that, there's going to be ramifications that could long-term affect my life. So in Central Asia, there was very much a sense of concern for your safety. Like a church being raided would not be out of question. And so it wasn't like you would invite people to come to church. That was not your evangelical mode. You would, in fact, the church was a very exclusive group that was meant to encourage those believers and build up their faith and to invest in their leadership. And when they met and where they met often changed to protect them. Does that make sense?
So, like if somebody was interested and, they could see that you were different and, you might have been able to say something about Jesus, then you would just like meet them for coffee at a restaurant?
No, usually I'd meet them in my home. And I'd have another believing woman come with me who I thought, oh, that woman, because in Central Asia, it's very much gender-specific conversations. Most of my relationships, except with my host family, were all with women. And so with the women, I would pick another believing woman that I think, oh, these would be a good fit. And then the two of us would go, and usually one person would usually pray, and just the whole time just be praying, and just be praying for me, or I'd be praying for her. And then the other person would just be there to just bless and share truth if we saw an open door to share the truth of Jesus. And sometimes, like I remember one time my friend and I, we went to a woman's house, and she basically just needed to share that she thought her husband was cheating on us. And it was not the time to tell her, we just sat there and listened to this great heart of, she just needed to talk about that, which was very common in this Central Asian culture. The man would have multiple women outside of his marriage. But she just needed us to sit and listen to her. And so that was part of it, just building the bridge of relationship and then trying to discern in the moment, is this someone who I could pull out my Bible and share truth with and say, look, you know what? God, you're struggling with the love of a man, you're right. But there is someone who will love you faithfully and perfectly. Discerning when to share that and when not to was definitely a part of the journey. Did that help? Does that flesh it out a little?
I just wondered that eventually, with your call, you couldn't go back. Was there a way that these people that you've affected could get together?
Yeah. Usually, hopefully, through the relationships that you've connected them to, that they are oh, we can. But also, when we left, the people that we left knew the other believers that were connected to us, So, and also through just giving them Bibles and encouraging them to read. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
Bible is translated in that language?
In Uzbek? Yes. It's a little older version. I think there's now a newer version that's on the internet, but it's more an King James version. But you can still read it. Yeah. Yes.
Being in two different countries, was it a common language between the two countries, or did you have to learn to speak differently from one?
Oh, that's a good question. So the way Stalin, in the 1930s, this will be a little history, when Stalin divided up all of the republics, which is what the word stands for, he did not make them all connected to the same language. And this was intentional. The regions were divided up specifically to be more of a melting pot so that a region could not revolt as easily against him. Now, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's what the history books say. And so when you look at the major city of Tajikistan culture, it's located in Uzbekistan, which is Samarkand, which is mentioned in It's a Wonderful Life when Jimmy Stewart says, I want to go, and he lists all these places, and he says Samarkand, and anybody that's a missionary in Uzbekistan is like, ah! I was like, 1/2 second of fame. And so Stalin intentionally divided things up so that the countries could not revolt with a common language. So in Central Asia, there's just a lot of mixes of Uzbek people, which is what initially Dan and I both partnered with the Alliance to serve, is the Uzbek people. So transferring to Tajikistan was almost like moving from Cleveland to Indianapolis. It didn't have, we're still in the Midwest, we still spoke the same language. Like, yeah, there's a border between us, but there wasn't a lot of diversity in that relocating. Does that make sense? Even up into Russia, there will be a lot of Uzbeks. Even all the way up into like St. Petersburg, you will still have a lot of Uzbeks because of that whole Soviet empire and the way that they're so connected to the republics of Central Asia. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Yeah.